Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, good.
First off,
Good to have you back.
Yeah, I know. I missed doing the show for a week, and I'm sure some people missed me. And for those, just to get this one out of the way and apologize as soon as possible. I'm in my new house. I do not have our actual audio set up here, so I'm a little echoey, but we've had worse audio.
There's a bottom of the barrel, and we went there already.
Yeah, it might not be as good as last week, but it won't be worse than some of them. So I went to the pre-release yesterday, and it was pretty fun. Aether Revolt, as I have found out it is pronounced, is a pretty neat set. And in case you hadn't guessed, we're doing a set review. It's a week later than most people, but better.
Well, no one's done the pauper set review yet, right?
I think Alex actually beat us to it. I think he had one as pretty much as soon as he could.
That is Alex's in silky smooth audio.
So this week, yeah, we're doing a set review. Nothing super in depth. But I had a good time at the pre-release. I opened Red White Vehicles, the deck, and I ran that, and it went well. I had to drop a little early because my wife wanted me to help out with some stuff around the house. So, there are things besides magic in your life, right?
Insert disparaging relationship joke here.
So let's just get into it. First let's discuss. We got two new mechanics. So the first of them is Revolt, and Revolt is one of those ones where it's kind of like Morbid, right? Like it checks to see if you had a permanent you control leave the battlefield this turn. You do something. And then we have Improvise, which is convoke for artifacts, right? Is it the same?
No, not even a little bit.
As convoke?
Convoke. Yes, I thought you said affinity.
No.
Yes, it's like convoke.
And that's something that we want to make clear. Convoke is a very heavily nerfed affinity because the big thing is it doesn't turn your lands into soul lands.
Right. That's immediately what I was thinking. So flavor question for you here, Mike. Because you probably know a little bit more about this than I do. Are the Revolt cards the rebels and the Improvise cards the bad guys?
I think the Revolt cards are all supposed to be the good guys, but I think Improvise is just it is a value neutral mechanic. I think it's supposed to represent cobbling something together out of parts.
And the reason I ask is I feel like there's not really a lot of bad guys. There's not a lot of bad guys cards. It's like in Masks, the rebels and the mercenaries were pretty evenly represented, even if the rebels totally blew the mercenaries out of the water. But it just doesn't feel like, I went through the set review. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of bad guy cards. Is that true, or is that just me?
So I think white is, the villainous color here. What white's all about, law and order, right? So in this world, they've taken it to the absolute extreme and have implemented some weird fascist government. But it does kind of feel like the bad guys are underrepresented here.
Okay, cool. Glad that's not just me.
Okay, so let's kick things off. We're going to go by color order and alphabetically. We're not going to cover every card because there's a lot of cards that just aren't good enough for our format, right?
Right.
So we're going to start off with Countless Gears Renegade. So it's 1 and a white for a creature dwarf artificer. It's a 2/2, and it has Revolt. When Countless Gears Renegade enters the battlefield, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So this is kind of a 3/3 for 2.
Well, more than that, on its face, yes. More than that, this is an excellent Ghostly Flicker target because if I'm correct, it will trigger its own Revolt.
Yes, it will. It will have seen that something left the battlefield when it returns. Revolt plays very nicely with Flicker. Anytime you flicker something permanent with Revolt on it, it automatically triggers its own Revolt trigger.
Right. And there's just that. I mean, I'm not thinking a combo here. I'm just thinking there's that straight up blue white flicker deck that plays that flicker card with flashback. What's it called?
Momentary Blank.
Yeah, momentary blink. There are decks that just play that card for value. Not the least of which, the most popular of which is undoubtedly the Reality Acid deck. Do you think this could see a home in that style of deck? It certainly seems to me like it could, just because it plays very well with that what that deck's trying to do. It generates a lot of value, and also I just realized plays very well with Thraben Inspector.
Yeah, it plays well with Thraben Inspector. It plays well with Skyfisher effects as well. Like
Right.
on turn 4, going like Skyfisher, get back my Countless Gears Renegade, recast Countless Gears Renegade is not a terrible play.
This seems like one of the better new cards in the set. I think it definitely has some of the most potential of being playable because, like you said, even if you just play it after you trigger the revolt, it's a 2/2. It's a 3 power for 2 mana, and even just by itself, a 2/2 blocks stuff.
Yeah, a bear is not, the end of the world, and the fact that it comes with an extra body, it kind of has its own built-in edict protection, which is interesting. Though, you'd much rather have the built-in edict protection on something bigger.
Right. Just thinking back to like a deck like Boros Tokens, which I'm not sure wants to play this card. You could conceivably see a turn where like you turn 1 Thraben Inspector, you turn 2 this guy for I guess no value, and then I don't know. Never mind. I'm like not really thinking very clearly here. I'm thinking of a way for you to use Glinthawk to pick up this 1/1 servo.
So actually, the spicy play that I've seen that is completely goofy is turn 1 land and Lotus Petal, sack Lotus Petal, Countless Gears Renegade with Revolt turn 1.
I don't hate it, but I also don't think that's very good.
Yeah, Lotus Petal is kind of one of those weird cards where the moment I see it in a list, I'm kind of like, is this a real list, or, are we just getting some sort of jank here?
Yeah, for sure.
But this is definitely, sadly, the first card that we talk about is one of the better ones, and it's not all downhill, right?
Interestingly, a white card with Revolt.
Yeah, I think Revolt is white and green and black mostly. I think there's some amounts of it in blue and red, but I think it's mostly focused in those 3 colors, and specifically white.
Yeah, well, I like this card. Incidentally, there are a lot more artificers this set than in the previous one, and so those Inventor's Goggles might get a little better.
That's
especially
true.
Since there's a lot of new Trinket Mage targets in this set as well. It could conceivably blue-white Trinket Mage, Volt. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but it does expand our options on that front a little as far as the goggles go.
Another thing worth pointing out: Revolt does trigger off creatures dying in combat, and
Right.
Countless Gears Renegade goes in a deck that's going to be in combat a lot, right?
Right.
So next up, we've got Dawn Feather Eagle. So what does this one do?
It's a 5 mana 3/3. All right, that's all right. Sure.
Yeah.
That is flying. Okay, that's a little better. When Dawnfeather Eagle enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn.
So we've actually seen 2 versions of this card in the not too distant past. Origins had Amperin Tactician, which was 2 and 2 white for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Then in Shadows over Innistrad, we had Inspiring Captain, which was 3 and a white for the exact same card. And now they've tacked on 1 more colorless mana for flying and adding vigilance to its buff effect.
So the problem with this card is that it's not an instant, and it costs 5 mana. I mean, right now we live in a world where Rally the Peasants is this effect. And white also has, what's it called? Guardian's Pledge, a 1 and 2 white for a +2/+2, and I just think that the decks that are going to want to be playing this card are already playing these other cheaper cards.
I think that's fair. I think Dawn Feather Eagle is interesting because it is kind of like we've seen various renditions of it in a very quick time frame, each one like a little better than the last, and I think this one is the best one. It's just, is it good enough? Period.
Right. I will say this one does cost more than Imprint Tactician. I don't know about Inspiring Captain.
Inspiring Captain's also at 4. So it's 1 more mana for flying, and your creatures
Right.
all get vigilance, which
Right.
I feel because of the vigilance, you're not going to be, if you're using this, you're not going to be using it as, a finishing blow. You're using it more as, I want to swing in and I want to block. So I think it occupies a different space than cards like Rally, which is usually either knocking your opponent to low single digits or killing them. I think Dawn Feather Eagle is much more of like a mid-range kind of affair.
All right. I'll buy that.
Like I'm not touting it as amazing. I'm just saying, I think it's worth looking at, right?
Right.
Next on the list is one that I've seen discussed pretty heavily online, Bastion Inventor. So 5 and a blue. It has Improvise, which, as a reminder, your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1 generic. And for 5 and a blue, you get a 4/4 hexproof. So as we said, Improvise is not affinity. So this guy is, he's not, just late game 1 blue.
Now, he is good. He essentially would occupy the same spot in the deck that he or she is going to go into, that Gurmag Angler might occupy. And this would be like a blue artifact-focused control deck.
And that's what kind of kills me on this is the 4/4 body. Like, if we'd gotten a 4/6, oh my god, I would love this card.
Yeah.
Or even like a 5/4, something that can like be an answer to Angler that's hard to deal with otherwise.
Now, Improvise is going to this guy is going to be. It just depends on how good this deck is. Like, is this the deck? A deck that this guy might go into would definitely be a deck that's playing stuff like Prophetic Prism, other incidental artifacts, I suppose. But really, it's going to be like a finisher, and you're going to play it like really late game where you're able to defend it. But then, it's like, why are you using this as your win condition when it's not, when it's a 4/4 is like the big question.
Well, let me hit you with something here. Improvise, and you brought up Prophetic Prism. Improvise just kind of turns Prophetic Prism into, is it Prismatic Lens? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yes, Prismatic Lens is the same as Prophetic Prism, except it does not draw a card, but it does tap for a single colorless mana.
Yeah, so this kind of, it gives you value off artifacts that are either like not producing mana or in some cases not doing anything. Like this guy with equipment is really cool because you can tap the equipment and then equip it to him. And
the problem is that the equipment in our format is Bone Splitter and Flayer Husk, right?
Yeah, but maybe I don't know. Maybe the Improvise, if you can find enough other cards that care about just having artifacts sitting around, it could justify you playing some like kind of janky options.
Well, we're talking a deck that might also play Gear Seeker Serpent, which is probably just much better than this card. Thoughtcast.
Yeah, I think Gear Seeker is pretty valid here as something that could just be better than this.
But I do like that it is hexproof. That's not really a common effect, effect that we see in cards like this. Only other real analog for this is Benthic Giant, which Alex has pointed out, you have to actually tap out to play. Yeah. And this lets you play this very late game while still being able to hold up counter magic.
And I think that's the appeal to it, right? What mana cost are you happy paying for this? Like, are you happy at like
3?
3? Okay, I feel like I feel like at 4 I'm okay with it. Like,
all right, 4's fine.
Like turn 6, pay 4 mana for this thing and hold up counterspell feels okay to me.
All right, I'll buy that.
Next up, Ice Over. What does that one do?
1 and a U for an enchantment - aura. Enchant artifact or creature. Enchanted permanent does not untap during its controller's untap step. So it's essentially a narcolepsy / curse of chains that allows you to enchant an artifact. So you could theoretically enchant a land, a Springleaf Drum.
Yep.
A Prophetic Prism. Any sorts. I mean, I guess really the big one might be Serrated Arrows because it prevents them from using it ever again. or they can use it once and that's it.
Well, I think the big thing for me is just that this gives blue a pretty cheap way to interact with artifacts in a more permanent way after they resolve.
Right, because obviously it'd be better to just go ahead and annul it or steel sabotage it, but
Yeah. Also, as a minor side note, the part of me that went to art school for my college cannot abide by you referring to an M dash as a hyphen, but really picking nits here.
what did you call it?
It's an M dash.
It's not shaped like an M at all, Mike.
No, but it's the same width as one.
Okay. All right.
But I do think like there is some interesting play with this. I don't know if it's a better sideboard card than, as you brought up, annul or steel sabotage. But it does let them interact with a resolved artifact, which they didn't always have. Sure, right. you got stuff like capsize or boomerang or other things that can bounce them, but
boomerang, a solid blue card, the most underplayed spell in the format, if you ask my opinion.
I think boomerang does not get the respect it deserves because capsize just seems better. Also, sweet Rebecca Gay art.
Yeah, foil 7th edition. Get me 4 of those.
Next on the list, we've got Alex's spoiler card, Metallic Rebuke. 2 and a blue, improvise. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 generic. So this is mana leak.
Right, it's mana leak potentially for you.
So
most decks are just going to play mana leak. The only real deck this could go into would be one of the kitty lists or I guess Affinity, but I don't know if either of those decks are interested in playing mana leak.
Yeah. So Mana Leak has always kind of had the issue of it gets worse as the game goes on, and Metallic Rebuke in all like sincerity, like if you go like turn 1 artifact, turn 2 artifact, that like you'd have to go 2 1-drops to have this up on your opponent's turn 2, and
right.
That's a little rough. I mean, it does mean that you get to make a turn 2 play, but you're also kind of cramping your own mana in that way. I don't know. This is a weird one.
That being said, people are totally going to play this in Standard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a mana leak in Standard, right?
Right. But I agree with you. And like a deck like Teachings is never going to want to play this card, and that's really the only deck that might play a mana leak, in my opinion. I mean, maybe there are other decks that might randomly want one, but Teachings, I think, is the only deck I've seen with any real, or at least blue-black control is the only real archetype with any consistency I've seen playing mana leak.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I had to actually look up Pristine Talisman because I was curious if the gaining life was part of the activated ability or if it was just whenever it becomes tapped, and sadly it is part of the activated ability. So then
it taps for a mana anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a Metallic Rebuke, if you can get it consistently for 1 blue mana, I feel okay about it.
And honestly, it's the same reason people don't play Stoic Rebuttal, which is 1 UU counter target spell. If you have Metalcraft, it costs UU. Like, people don't play that card either.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly, because you can just play counterspell that's always UU.
Right, exactly.
So maybe, is there a deck that wants this as Mana Leaks 5 through 8, or do you go for Rune Snag first?
I'd have to say that Rune Snag is the better card, right? Well, those just go into 2 different decks, don't they? Like, Rune Snag is into the self-mill deck where you can potentially mill your own Rune Snags and then use the ones that you have left to greater effect.
I mean, sure, it works well in the self-mill plan because you don't care about milling them, but I think Rune Snag just, in a control deck is fine because each one is better than the last one.
Right. Yeah, I'm just not really a fan of Metallic Rebuke, I guess. I just can't see it replacing any of our existing counter spells, even in decks with heavy artifact counts.
That's true. I guess I'm just glad that, we had a counterspell that was good enough to actually discuss.
Yeah. I mean, you get this. I mean, it seems like a pretty cool story card, though. It's got Tezzeret threatening someone with a bunch of spikes, and he's all like, my evil plan is working. You're not good enough to stop me.
As someone who loves the Legacy Tezzeret deck, I'm pretty happy with the amount of cards he's on. I think he's a cool villain.
He wasn't always a bad guy, you know. That's what makes him so cool.
But this does kind of bring me to something like this set is pretty pushed for like some of the recent sets. Barring mistakes like printing a lot of cards with Delve on them. Like I can't really think of a lot of other sets that have had this set's power level.
Right.
Next, you want to take the next one, take into custody.
Take the next one into custody. Yeah, this card's called Take into Custody. It's you for tap target creature. It doesn't untap until during its controller's next untap step, which is an effect Blue has seen before. I can't remember the name of the card. It's something about ice and tapping, and they're almost always freezy cards.
Yeah, except now here you go. You were talking about cards for villains. Take into Custody, I think, is clearly supposed to be the consulate, the villains of this story.
Police brutality.
But so it's an instant, which is like really important on something like this because if it was
it'd be terrible as a sorcery.
Yeah, as a sorcery, the creature you tap down is skipping 1 attack and 2 blocks, right? With Take into Custody at instant speed, you cast it during their beginning of combat step, tap something down, they skip 2 attacks and 2 blocks with that creature.
Right. Now, is this card better than, say, Vapor Snag, which is really what it's competing with?
So with Vapor Snag, okay, so Vapor Snag, in theory, if they can recast the creature, is worse, right? Because they'll be attacking with it on their next turn. Right. And let's just pretend there's no life loss on Vapor Snag, because the one life loss rarely matters. Yeah. I'm going to counter with the fact that Take into Custody does not feel terrible against, say, Chittering Rats or any number of ETB effects.
That's fair.
And it definitely fits into a tempo-y deck. Like, this is not a control card. This is I just need to get in for a couple of attacks, and you've got this one pesky blocker I can't deal with.
So maybe one of the Kiln Fiend style decks?
I mean, it actually does kind of line up with what the Kiln Fiend, the blue-red Kiln Fiend deck wants to do. Like, it taps down a blocker for a couple turns. It triggers your Kiln Fiends. It'll flip Delver. Actually, the more I talk about it, the more I think Take into Custody might be kind of a real card.
Well, and there are some corner cases where Apostle's Blessing isn't enough. Versus Affinity, they might have 3 different colors of creatures and 1 artifact creature.
Yeah.
And so Apostle's Blessing doesn't seem super solid, but if you could like tap down one of them, then act and do the protection spell, then you have Battle Rage. Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem too terrible.
Yeah. Again, not like blowing the lid off anything, but this is definitely more than a solid card in my opinion. Next up, we've got Defiant Salvager, and actually, this is one that's right up your alleyway. 2 and a black, 2/2, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on Defiant Salvager. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery.
Oh, so
it's not ATOG.
Actually, I'm going to say I don't hate it because one of the big problems with the combo ATOG deck, the Grixis combo ATOG deck I was tooling around with a year or so ago, is that there wasn't really another meaningful way to sacrifice artifacts. Now, I don't know if the lack of being able to put a +1/+1, the lack of another +1/+1 is kind of bad. Granted, you obviously can't respond with it, but if you're sacking all your artifacts to this guy and then killing your opponent with 1 shot and you're coupling it with something like Disciple of the Vault, I don't hate it.
Also noteworthy, it is black and Doomblade still does see play. It can, eat up your Somber Hoverguards or Serpents or Carapace Forgers. I don't know. It looks pretty okay. If you could do it at instant speed, I would love this.
Yeah, then it'd be very, very, very strong.
Actually, as a side note, did you see that ATOG got a functional reprint in this set?
Yeah, I did. I'm sad it's not a common. Just kidding. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, if you think people complain about getting the fling combo pulled on them now. Oh my god.
Well, Atog's also is kind of a hard card to play around if you don't have a real answer for it. Like you can basically never block it. You just lose to a top deck fling unless you have a response. Like it's a very hard card to play around, which is why I understand why people don't like playing against it.
But yeah, Defiant Salvager seems pretty neat. Maybe there's a aristocrat style list out there that wants to take advantage of this, because it does still let you pop creatures into it, which I think is interesting.
That's kind of the reason I think that the combo Atog deck it fits very nicely into there, because really the only 4 cards I had to really win with were the 4 Atogs, and so having maybe Atog 5 and 6 will give that deck a little bit more consistency, because you're more likely to draw one of your combo pieces, the creature you're sacrificing stuff to. And from there, it almost doesn't matter. So really the biggest problem with the sorcery speed activation is that if your opponent goes to kill this, you cannot save it.
Yeah. So I feel like with this, if your opponent's on red, you are kind of priced into popping 2 to 3 things into it immediately if you really need it to survive.
And of course, we have good things to pop to it. If you pop a Ichor Wellspring or Chromatic Star, you're drawing a card anyway, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like you said, the fact that you can get creatures, that means that Flare Husk is 2 activations, which is kind of neat.
That's true. Like that's actually kind of interesting.
So there are some interesting cases with this card. I'm actually pretty interested in testing it now that we've been talking about it a little bit more. I don't know if it's a super slam dunk. I think it B1, and maybe if it was exactly Atog but black and still had the same downside, I might consider it a little better. 3 is kind of rough, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem terrible, so I like it.
All right, next on our list is
Finn Hauler.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know why you put this on here, but I'll go ahead and go through the card anyway. Finn Hauler is 7 mana, 6 in a black, for what appears to be a giant dung beetle, and it is a is that like a mound of poop in the background? I think so. It's a creature, insect with improvise that cannot be blocked by artifact creatures. So that's not nothing, but that really means it's only unblockable by certain cards in affinity.
And it's a 5/5. So the immediate thing when you look at this, right, 7 mana, 5/5 with a cost reduction ability, the first thing a lot of people are going to think of is Angler, and I'm here to tell people this isn't Gurmag Angler.
Well, improvise is a lot worse than Delve.
Yeah. Is this totally unplayable?
Mike, I was just sitting here thinking to myself, is this even playable in Limited?
I did see someone at the pre-release playing one, and it did win them the game because a 5/5 is hard to deal with.
All right. I do not think this is playable in our format. I understand why you put it on the list, because the comparison to Gurmag Angler is a little inevitable.
Yeah.
But I think a deck that wants to play this kind of creature is not an artifact deck. It's because Affinity has no room for this card. Like, why on earth would I play this when I have Gearseeker Serpent? And I think that's really the yardstick that the creatures in this set had to measure up to from an affinity standpoint is, well, is it better than Gearseeker Serpent? And Gearseeker Serpent is pretty freaking good, and like this card is just not gonna replace that.
I mean, you got given an actual affinity creature, and this is not even close. So,
right. But I think it was good of you to put it on the list. I don't think we have to put the absolute best cards on the list. It is a review, so anything that might be playable. This had potential, but no.
All right, next on the list, let's talk about a card that is actually a riff on something we know and love. Fourth Bridge Prowler. So it's 1 black for a human rogue. It's a 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get -1/-1 until end of turn.
And that's actually kind of cruel, right? Because this is sort of a fume spitter, what's the other one? The goblin.
Actually, there's 2 of them now: Festering Goblin and Shambling Goblin.
Which neither of them can sacrifice themselves, which is fine. But really, the revolt synergy goes with something like Fume Spitter, and I think Fume Spitter is the best out of that cycle anyway. So because this doesn't help with revolt at all, which is kind of lame.
I mean, if you really needed it, you could target itself.
Right, that's true. But I do like that you could kill a creature and then chump a creature or trade with another X1. So
Yeah.
it's not horrendous. I also like how, I mean, I feel like this guy in the picture is supposed to be evoking Tezzeret in some way. He's got like the claw arm.
Yeah, I'm leaning in a little bit, and it kind of looks like he's got like an exoskeleton thing going on, more so than like full on replacement. But yeah, no, he kind of has a Tezzeret vibe to him.
Now that being said, your note here is that it could be okay in mono black controls. It adds to devotion, and it does kill a Delver when it enters the battlefield, which isn't nothing. I don't hate it. It's just the other side of the coin on some of these other cards that we already have. And I think the reason that Fume Spitter sees the most play is that Fume Spitter can be activated at any point.
Yeah, and while a 1/1 is not the greatest of threats, sometimes you just have to chip in with a 1/1.
Right. Now, I'm sure this dude's going to be great for limited because he crews vehicles after he's already on the field.
He crews vehicles and he eats servos. So
Right. So really, it's going to come down to, is this effect where he enters the battlefield better than when it leaves the battlefield on Fume Spitter? And the one deck that came to mind when I thought of that was the Ratlock deck that's been doing pretty well lately. But I don't think that deck plays the Goblin who enters the battlefield and kills something already. So
the Goblin is actually a leaves the battlefield trigger.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it has to. So the Goblin trades with X2s. This guy eats an X1 and maybe trades with another X1. And Fume Spitter is just anytime you want to, you can kill an X1. Or you can make a block worse.
Right. So it does fit into that range. I like it. It's a nice card. And then you can call it FBP if it ever starts seeing a lot of play.
We certainly can. So next up, you want to take this next one?
If you insist. Resourceful Return, 1 in a black, sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If you control an artifact, draw a card. All right, that's not that bad.
So this is Raise Dead. You got 1 more mana tacked onto it, but if you have an artifact, you draw a card. So this kind of becomes draw 2, almost.
Squint hard, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you're getting 2 cards for 1. So
right.
it is net card advantage.
Right, and so you could play this. What's that other card from the last set, the 3-mana one that returns a creature and an artifact card? I like that card.
Fortuitous Find.
Yeah, that card kind of reminds me of Fortuitous Find or Resourceful Return. That's funny. They're both alliterations.
Actually, so the thing that would sell me on Resourceful Return, if this was return a creature or artifact from your graveyard to your hand, and then if you control an artifact, draw a card, I would feel so much better about that.
Yeah, that would be strong. As is, I don't hate it. Drawing the card is certainly relevant. Would you rather play this or Night's Whisper?
Well, okay, so Night's. Oh man,
Night's Whisper is an actual 2 cards, which is why I ask.
Well, this is still 2 cards because you do get it back to hand.
Well, yeah, and I guess it really depends on the creatures you're getting back. Are you getting back Mull Drifter? Because in that case, I'd rather have Resourceful Return.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tricky one. Like,
now, I will say
2 life is not nothing. Like this gets better in the late grindy portions of the game.
What do you think of this in Mardu Tort, not the Tordex deck, like the Mardu Bleak Coven, any of the Bleak Coven vampire decks is really what I'm asking here.
Okay, I feel much better about that because if you return a Bleak Coven with this and you get a card off it, because if you're returning the Bleak Coven, you probably have an artifact or 2, or
exactly.
3.
That's why my mind went there. So that's really the black-based artifact deck, or the Rakdos version too, I suppose. But yeah, that this card might fit into that deck. And then I think that's still the same question though. Do you play this? Do you play Night's Whisper, or split it 50-50? Because I agree, like getting back your Bleak Coven is probably better than getting a random card out of your library.
Well, that's kind of how I'm viewing this. Like, this definitely goes into some sort of grindy deck if it goes anywhere, and it has to have like a density of artifacts high enough. Like, without the draw card, this is bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just terrible raised dead.
Yeah.
Like terrible raised dead.
Yeah. I also kind of wish we maybe got instant speed on this, but
that might be a little too good.
That might be a little too pushed. I don't know. I'm pretty torn on this one, but like it's interesting enough where I did want to discuss it.
Yeah. I don't hate it. A lot of these cards, I think we're just going to have to kind of see where they go. But I think that most of the cards that we've covered today at least have some sort of home in some existing decks. Remains to be seen if they're good enough for those decks.
Yeah. So next up, we've got a card that the Reddit was all abuzz about when it got spoiled. Sweatworks Brawler. So 3 in a red for a human artificer with Improvise and Menace, and it's a 3/3. So what point do you feel good about this? Like, and I think that's the big question with these Improvise cards. Like, how cheap do they have to get before you feel good about casting them?
For me, for this card, it would have to be 1R or R, and the reason for that is that there is already a 3-drop Menace creature in the format, and nobody plays it. It's a red. It's
is
goblins?
It's Boggart Brute, I think.
Yeah, Boggart Brute. That's it.
The one from Origins.
Now, granted, you can't disfigure this card, but I do not think that is the reason people don't play Boggart Brute.
Yeah, this still dies to Bolt. But man, like if you can get this for 2 mana, like a 2 mana 3/3 is okay. A 2 mana 3/3 that's kind of got evasion, and if it doesn't, it might eat 1 to 2 creatures, is pretty powerful in my mind.
Yeah, for 4, it's terrible. For 3, I think it's still not good. You would have to be able to consistently get this to 2 mana for me to think this is a good card.
Okay, I feel like that's fair because 3/3 is not the most impressive body in this format, but 3 evasive power closes out the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, so the fact that it's not cheap means you can't really play it in an aggressive deck, but the fact that it is Menace is not, it's not negligible. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
If it didn't have Menace, I would say this card is absolutely unplayable.
Yeah, 100%. Like Menace is still one of those things that since it recently became evergreen, I still don't fully know how to evaluate it.
If this creature had Intimidate, I think, or not Intimidate. Yeah, Intimidate. I would play it.
If it had Intimidate, I would feel much better about this. Yeah, that's fair. All right, moving on. You want to wrangle up this next one?
Oh my God, Mike, you're just stealing all my thunder on these. The next card is Wrangle. It's one in a red for gain control of target creature with power 4 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. So threaten for less with a restriction on it. Nobody plays threaten.
Well, the big thing is it's 2 mana versus right. I think threaten 3 or 4, and then active treason is 3.
I actually don't know what actual threat is. I'm thinking of active treason.
Yeah, active treason is 3. So what are you missing for that 1 reduced mana? You're missing Ulamog's Crusher. You're missing Gurmag Angler. You're missing Gear Seeker. And what else?
A Tog, if they sack stuff to it, that's terrible. So I don't think so. I don't know, man. I don't think Red really wants a card like this. And threaten effects are generally like some sort of goofy threaten deck that doesn't exist in our format, or it's a good limited card because it gets rid of a blocker and lets you attack your opponent. But in constructed, I don't know.
I can confirm that this is pretty sweet and limited. I ran it in my vehicles deck, and I definitely took people's creatures and just ran them into my opponent.
So the good thing you can do here is you could take like a Mirror Enforcer or a Carapace. Well, actually, Carapace Forger wouldn't work if you don't yourself have artifacts.
That's true. So what about using this in some sort of aristocrat deck where you have sacrifice outlets, like being able to get in an attack with your opponent's creature and then just sacrificing it for value at the end of turn?
That would be really, really good. Sorry, I was going to say that'd obviously be good, Mike. But no, that would be good. The aristocrats deck is black and green. Is it worth going in a red for the threaten style effects?
Well, in red you get the threaten style effects. You also get a Hissing Iguanar the quote unquote blood artist. It's 2 and a red for a 3/1 that whenever a creature dies, you get to ping someone for 1 damage. I don't know. I think this is an interesting card, and it's going to be interesting to see if dropping it by 1 mana is enough, even with the restriction, for this to be remotely relevant.
Yeah.
All right, next we got Lifecraft Cavalry. Bunch of dudes riding mechanical elk, I guess. So it's 4 and a green for an elf warrior with trample revolt. It enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and it's a 4/4.
I like this card.
So 5 mana for a 6/6 trampler is actually pretty okay, right?
Right. It's an elf. Relevant tribe always gives points to a card. Would you actually play this in elves? I don't know.
I can't think of a good way to reliably trigger revolt in elves.
Right.
Outside of assuming your opponent has removal.
Right. But it is good with Timberwatch, although that's not really that deck style. They'd rather just, attack with a whole bunch of things so you can't block the Timberwatch. 6 mana is kind of that's not really a lot for that. I was going to say it's kind of a lot for that, but it's not really like...
Well, it's 5.
Oh yeah, sorry, 5. 5 mana is not really that bad in elves. I don't know. I don't hate it. It's definitely a strong late game threat. It's a 6/6 trampler. I could envision some sort of green, maybe blue-green control deck utilizing this as its in game because
I think
it kills anglers.
It does kill anglers, and I think this is one of those cards where revolt's most often going to be triggered off things dying in combat. This doesn't strike me as the kind of thing where you go out of your way to include Skyfisher effects.
Well, you could play Steven in a deck like this in green.
Steven.
I was going to say Steve and Muldrifter, but because I'm lazy in my speech, it came across as Steven. You could play blue-green control deck, Steven J. Muldrifter himself. And, Muldrifter, obviously, because it's super duper good. You could put that in any deck and it would make it better. But, just as a control finisher.
That is also something that we didn't point out before. Evoke creatures do leave the battlefield.
Right, exactly. So that would even be some more synergy there. So I don't hate the card. I think it goes into a deck, which is more than we can say for some of the cards on this list. So. Yeah,
I'm not sure what deck it is, but it goes into a deck.
You could jam this into Tron even. Granted, it's not as good as Fangren Marauder. And
actually, you mentioned Tron. Rugtron still exists, and it plays a bunch of self-sacrificing artifacts.
Right, exactly. So a 6/6 Trampler in that deck doesn't seem bad. Is it better than Fangren Marauder though? That's the real question. I guess you could play this as a 1 or a 2 of.
Yeah. Actually, what about the mono green Tron list? Regardless of whether that's been putting up numbers, it does exist, and that plays
Aurochs.
It plays Aurochs. Importantly, it plays Haunted Fengrath in a high amount, and it plays Expedition maps.
You cannot tutor this with Fierce Empath, though. I don't believe. Can you?
Fierce Empath, I believe, is 6 or higher, which is a problem. But it's not. Yeah. I just looked it up. Fierce Empath is 6 or greater, and I don't think that kills this for me. It's just 6/6 Trampler for 5 is a lot.
Yeah, I don't hate the card. It's a very good beater. And it would definitely go into some sort of big mana deck. I kind of like the Steve idea because you could. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well,
it could also go into the Revolt cards are also triggered by Emerge, which is kind of interesting. So
that's true. And some of the Green Tron lists were playing around with God, what is that card's name? It of the Horrid Swarm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's interesting just because it is a very efficient body for what you're paying. Let's move on. You got a creepy animal next.
We got a scrounging Bandar. It's a cat monkey, Mike. It's actually extremely adorable. It's holding what appears to be a scepter.
Yeah, it looks like a little mischievous critter that goes around stealing stuff.
And it's a bear. It's 1 G for Scrounging Bandar, who enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. So that's bearific. At the beginning of your upkeep, however, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from Scrounging Bandar onto another target creature. So we were talking about this before the show. You could use this with Hunger of the Howl Pack because it would trigger itself. You could move the counters to another creature, and then you could Hunger yet another creature.
Or you could Hunger the same creature.
Yeah, you could do that too. Counters matter is not really a thing in Pauper. Maybe for like Skargan Pit Skulk, but like,
well, there was also there was that hot minute where we had the Simic Evolve deck.
Yeah.
Although
I guess Bio Shift is a common, but I don't think it's a very good card.
I don't think so either. But I think the Hunger of the Howl Pack is like best case scenario for this in my mind.
Yeah, but you know, a 2/2 is not. Its ability is unique. It does something cool.
Yeah, at common that ability is pretty unheard of. The interesting thing is you can't just disperse the counters among any number of creatures, though.
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate.
I'd feel better about this in like Stompy if it was a way to like protect against Electrickery better.
Yeah, I guess really you could use it to punch you some damage. Like if your 2/2 becomes irrelevant, you could put those counters onto a Skargan Pit Skulk or something. But the fact remains that since you could only do it in your upkeep, that's what makes it a little harder.
I would definitely prefer this. Like if it had an activated like sack this, put its +1/+1 counters on something else.
Modular.
Yeah, like a modular for creatures.
That'd be so good.
I'm trying to think. There was something in, I want to say Dragons of Tarkir that was like this. I'm just going to go off on a quick little tangent here. And I think it was even common at that did a similar thing on Death.
Well, people aren't playing that card. So.
Yeah, people aren't playing that one, but Servant of the Scale. So Servant of the Scale was green for a 0/0, enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter. When it dies, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Servant of the Scale. So maybe it might be one of those things where we're getting close to density required for it to be a deck.
Yeah.
I don't know. Scrounging Bandar is interesting. I like this energy with Hunger, which is a good card. And yeah, I guess this one is adorable. The other Bandar looked like the Grinch, and it was awful.
Well, the Grinch is also adorable, Mike. What are you saying?
All right, I'm going to have to stop you there, buddy.
All right, moving on.
Next on the list, Skyweaver Elite, and this was one of our first previews. 2 and a green for a 2/2 with Reach and Revolt. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So this isn't Elvish Visionary.
No. In fact, I don't see a reason. I don't think Elves would want to play this card. I don't think any deck would want to play this card over Elvish Visionary. 2/2 with Reach is interesting, but really, I think you want to be able to draw the card reliably, which is why you would play an effect like this. And even with one less power, being able to consistently draw the card, I think is just better.
So let me hit you with this. I would like this a lot better if it was a 2/3. The ability to Stonewall Core Skyfishers, and more specifically the Boros Tokens deck in its entirety.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it blocks Delver, which is always something we should talk about. But Elves doesn't actually have a bad Delver matchup. So
yeah, I think looking at creature types in this set is a bit of a red herring. Like the elf thing is not irrelevant, but I think a lot of these cards are just better analyzed in sort of mid-rangey weird decks. Personally.
Yeah, and I just can't think of a mid-rangey weird deck that would want to play Silkweaver Elite. Also, 3 mana is Muldrifter, so
yeah, I don't know. This is one of the ones that people got hyped on early, and I'm not sure it quite gets there.
I wonder if that was mostly because it was a card that was spoiled at the beginning.
I think there's definitely some of that where, obviously we all get a little bit more hyped because it's like, oh man, we got our first spoiler. What is it? but I don't think it's entirely without merit. Like maybe this sees play somewhere. It's a way for green decks to answer small flyers.
I think they have that well in hand already, though, is the problem.
How about you take this next one with some gorgeous art?
All right. It's called Unbridled Growth, cost G, enchant land. It's an enchantment. An enchanted land has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, sacrifice Unbridled Growth, draw a card. So immediate comparison is to that other green enchantment that draws you a card.
Abundant Growth.
Abundant Growth. However, which is better in almost every way, in my opinion. However, this does trigger Revolt.
It triggers Revolt. It can be brought back with an Auramancer.
The other one is obviously better because you can Sky Fisher it back to your hand and you can keep drawing cards off of it. Mm-hmm. This, you only get 1 draw before it goes away.
Yeah. It seems sweet for limited. I'm not convinced it's going to do anything. It looks like a good card, and I think that's why some people were excited about it. It looks similar to another card we already know is playable. And it's backwards. It's not right.
That ain't right.
Exactly. Like it's just it's doing a good thing, but in the wrong order, and it just kind of doesn't get there in my mind. I don't know what else to say about this. Like it's just not a.
Let's go to the next one. The next card's good.
The next one is Augmenting Automaton. It's a generic for 1/1 with 1 ability printed on it, 1 in a black. Augmenting Automaton gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So this sure is a mana sink late game.
Well, really what makes me like this card is it's a late game threat that you can get with Trinket Mage.
Yeah, and we actually complained pretty heavily, if I remember, during the spoilers for Kaladesh about the lack of Trinket Mage targets. And actually all the colorless cards we have on our list are Trinket Mage targets.
And so I actually really, really like this card. It reminds me of a much worse Basking Rootwalla.
Okay.
But I don't think its abilities are built. The fact that you can tutor with Trinket Mage is good. It'll go into that style of deck. Those decks tend to be slower anyway. Hopefully they'll have access to... The problem is you really need access to a lot of black mana. But I like the fact that it also pumps toughness. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think this is a bad card. I think it's I think it's a good card. I don't think it's like an amazing card, but I like that it's tutorable with Trinket Mage, and I like that it'll get in for a lot late game.
Yeah, those are all fair points. But that's also kind of all we have on this. Like it's just it is a card.
Well, anything you can get with Trinket Mage is worth considering, in my opinion.
Yeah. So why don't you take us on to our next Trinket Mage target?
It's Renegade Map, 1 colorless mana or generic mana, I should say. Renegade Map enters the battlefield tapped. You can sacrifice Renegade Map. Well, tap it to sacrifice it. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it is Expedition Map by another name.
Yeah, with a very, very serious downside. The fact that it does not get non-basics.
Well, it is free, so that is worth considering. We talked about that a little bit before. However, as I mentioned before the show, the decks that want to play a card like this, I don't know why they would play this over Expedition Map, and I don't think you'll be playing this in decks like Pig Trinket, which is the one with the tutorable effect, because we just got Ash Barrens for our 3-color decks, and I just can't see them wanting to play this card.
Well, that was going to be the comparison I drew. Is it's kind of similar to Ash Barrens in that you're paying 1 to get a basic to your hand of your choice. This takes a turn to do it as well. It is almost strictly better than Traveler's Amulet, which is 1 for the same effect, but it comes in untapped and you have to pay 1 and sacrifice it. So it's better in some ways, it's worse in some ways. It's got really cool art that I actually like. I don't know if you've taken a look at this, but it's a map with invisible ink on it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I will say, as a side note, as someone who loves the art of Magic, Kaladesh has been beautiful, and they did the transition to a slightly more war-torn world really well. I think like it gets across like the kind of like the almost weirdly, coincidentally, it reminds me a little bit of Rogue One that came out. Like we've got a lot of like Revolution themed media this time of year for some reason.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't,
pretty good.
I don't know. I've enjoyed the art for this. I'm going to close things out with the card I am actually the most excited about. Universal Solvent. 1 generic artifact, 7 tap, sacrifice Universal Solvent, destroy target permanent.
Yeah, the old tutorable scour from existence.
So you want to know what my favorite thing about this card is?
The fact that the universal solvent is not melting the bottle it's in.
Well, that's the thing that bothers me the most about it. But the thing that I like the most about this is it does not have one word that is very common on effects like this. It doesn't say non-land. This is just kind of like 7 mana. I get it. It's a lot. It blows up anything that is giving you trouble.
I mean, if you drops to this and the trickiest problem simply melt away, Mike.
Like, I just think it's really, really solid. Like, just the fact that, like, this is a late game answer to anything is really neat. And obviously the decks it's going to go in are the decks that can hit 7 mana routinely. But
in that case, is it better than Capsize?
Is it better than Capsize? Capsize? Oh, man. I see what you're getting at here. I don't know. I don't rightfully know. Because Capsize you can tutor up with Teachings. And this you can tutor up with Trinket Mage. And I don't know. I guess I'm just really hyped that there's a Trinket Mage target that I think is really cool.
Yeah, Trinket Mage targets are the best targets.
And I don't know. This is just like, it's a very powerful effect. I like the fact that you don't need to worry about counter backup if you get this down early. Much in the same way Executioner's Capsule exists, and it's really great as a turn 1 against, say, like a blue deck, like Delver. Once this hits the battlefield, you either have to bounce it or blow it up before you hit 7 mana.
Right. And it is a really sweet card. Like I'm not trying to deny that. The decks that maybe play Trinket Mage maybe don't also want to play Capsize. So I really don't hate it being able to blow up any permanent, even a problematic land, really. Make the card good. We don't have. I think this and Scour might be the only 2 just destroy target permanent cards we have in the format. So it is definitely worth considering.
All right, and the other like elephant in the room, it's got that magic number 7. So in Tron, this can be hit. Like you can start nuking stuff with this on turn 3,
right?
In theory.
Yeah. Because you can play turn 1, turn 2, and then untap, play your 3rd Tron land, blow something up. Like that's not terrible.
Yeah. Is that a good enough reason to play it in Tron? I don't know. Like I think I'm happiest when I can tutor this up on demand versus hoping to have it in my opener for turn 1. I don't know. It's just it's such an open-ended and powerful effect where I think not talking about this would be awful.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a sweet card.
I also do really love the art on this one as well. Like the little like funnel thing and the liquid dripping in and causing whatever that door is to melt. I don't know. This is like, it's got a high power ceiling, but like it also has the catch of it does nothing until you hit 7 mana.
Right. Yeah, dude. It's a sweet card. I've said that like 10 times now. Sorry, everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Hear me out. If it exiled, I would be 100% sold on this, and I would build 5 different decks to try and find a home for this.
Scour does exile,
but you need it not to be countered. Solvent, like that's my big thing is the reason why in some cases I prefer having Executioner's Capsule over Doomblade, even though it costs 1 more mana in the end. They only get 1 chance.
Everyone, play Ice Over in your deck. Then Mike can never activate this.
Well, it needs to get tapped first. Ice Over doesn't tap.
Oh, never mind, everyone.
In all seriousness, in Limited, this also contributes to Improvise until it's ready to be used.
Right.
This is like a slam dunk in my cube because it's like the exact kind of card I like in my cube because it's
foils
like
for
weird.
this are going to be hecka cheap too.
Yeah. Actually,
I like Fatal Push.
Oh yeah. As like a side note, I do occasionally mention the fact that I love cube, and this set was very good for cube. There's a lot of stuff where it's like not constructed playable, but it's certainly limited playable. I don't know. So what are like your final feelings on this set?
We got some stuff. Nothing really stands out to me other than the card that I think is 100% going to get played is the Countless Gears Renegade. The rest are sort of like, well, maybe if this, and this. So I don't know. I don't think we really got a lot, but I'm not really renowned for my brewing capabilities. So
I tend to play a little bit more on the rogue and brew end of things, and I think I actually agree with you. Like a lot of stuff in this set was like, okay, this would be better if we tweak some of these numbers, but it was kind of encouraging to see such a high power level for a standard legal set.
Yeah, the rest of the set is absolutely bananas.
Yeah, holy crap. Like there's an uncommon vehicle for 4 that's a 4/4 trample with crew 1 that every time it swings in it gets a +1/+1 counter. Like that is absurd.
Basically better Renegade Freighter.
Yeah. Thankfully at uncommon because I would not want to have to deal with that pauper.
Also ATOG is in standard now, so make of that what you will.
Yeah, ATOG eating a soul ring.
Yeah, I like that card a lot.
I did love that they have like actual soul ring on the card being eaten by that creepy gremlin thing. As a side note, I do not think the gremlins are cute, and I don't understand why people do.
No, dude. Why didn't they just populate this world with ATOGs?
I don't think the ATOG is cute either, but and another important note. We got our second pangolin.
Which card's pangolin?
There's an uncommon that depicts a pangolin.
Oh, okay. I was like, Prowling Pangolin's terrible. Why are we talking about that card? Okay.
I have a soft spot for Prowling Pangolin, and I like that pangolins exist in the Magic world. But okay, sure. They printed a second one. Just kind of a goofy side note. But yeah, I think this was like a solid set. Nothing that breaks, anything in our format. Just cards of varying quality, and I think that's good. Any closing statements from you?
I'll just go ahead and take us out. I'm pretty much done.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. Check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games and Elle. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.